You probably remember Saul Goodman as the guy in the loud suits with the terrible jokes.
Let's start with some tough love, all right?
And maybe you have a point. He's the guy you call when you're already in way too deep, right? He's the last resort. Here's the twist, though. While everyone else was dying, burning, or running for their lives, Saul was quietly outsmarting the DEA, the cartel, and Heisenberg himself.
You don't write, you don't call?
This legal clown was the sharpest survivor in the room, and today we're going to look at the times Saul Goodman pulled off the impossible. The times he proved that the man in the cheap suits was playing a far smarter game than anyone realized.
I had a good job until my boss accused me of stealing. I better call Saul!
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I. I believe that until proven guilty, every man, woman, and child in this country is innocent. And that's why I fight for you, Albuquerque.
Better call Saul.
So what makes Saul different from Walt, Gus, or Mike? It definitely wasn't raw power, and it wasn't brains in the traditional sense either. Walt had chemistry, Gus had cold discipline, Mike had tactical experience, and Saul had, what do you even call it? He surely had something else. He could see doors where everyone else saw walls. When others were trapped between two bad choices, Saul invited a third. He created options. He bought time. He slipped out of corners that should have ended him and all those around him. That's his real superpower. In Season 2, Episode 8, Badger gets picked up by the DEA. Suddenly, Walt and Jesse's whole operation is one bad break away from collapse. Walt's panicking, Jesse's clueless, and the DEA can taste the blood in the water. Then, Saul Goodman enters.
What are you doing, detective? What are you doing talking to my client without me present? You sneaky Pete.
Now, in these circumstances, most lawyers would push for a plea deal. That's what the playbook says. Or they do everything they could to stall the process. But Saul, he pulls something completely out of thin air.
DEA, huh? For a street bust. Now, what would two feds want with that little twerp?
In a classic bait and switch, he conjures up a professional fall guy. This guy is literally on retainer. His entire side hustle is taking the heat for drug busts. James Jimmy In-N-Out Kill Kelly is a guy with a rap sheet longer than a CVS receipt, and he loves to play Saul's game. Instead of protecting Badger, Saul hands the DEA a win on a silver platter, all while keeping Walt's identity as Heisenberg completely off the radar. Everyone walks away thinking they got exactly what they wanted. The cops close a case, Badger avoids serious time, and Walt gets to keep cooking in peace. That's classic Saul. Where others see two impossible choices, Saul conjures up a third option, and it usually feels like it has no chance of working. Yet, it does, time and time again, because he knows the system better than people running it. None of this is dumb luck, but it was the first time we got to see Saul's mask slip, and the moment that revealed Saul's real genius as a man capable of bending institutions until they serve his purposes. It's hard to imagine this was only Saul's opening act. As the story continues, his survival instincts only became sharper. In episode 11 of Season 2, Walt and Jesse have the product, but moving without drawing the attention of every cop in Albuquerque is an issue. Then, Walt has a grand idea. He wants to sling meth on street corners like it's lemonade. For that, he needs Jesse's small-time dealers. But both of them are one arrest away from serious jail time. One move, and it's over. Saul takes a look at their operation and utters the words that changed the series forever. I know a guy who knows a guy who knows another guy.
Well, what's his name?
I have no idea. He's very low profile. He's careful like that.
That's how we get to meet Gustavo Fring. For in case you've forgotten, Gus runs the most sophisticated meth distribution network in the Southwest and hides it behind his fried chicken empire. Think about this for a moment. Without Saul's introduction, Walt would never have been more than a desperate amateur. He would have continued cooking in RVs and ducking low-level busts. But now, thanks to Saul, he has access to an empire that will eventually make him millions. In a display of his incredible cleverness, Saul doesn't just hand over a name. Oh no. He brokers trust with one of the most paranoid men alive. Gus doesn't deal with amateurs. But when Saul says, "These are my guys," Gus listens. The single introduction transforms Walt and Jesse from small-time crooks into major league players. Saul knew exactly how far his network stretched, and he knew how to use it. He never muscles his way into power. Instead, he connects the right people at the perfect time. And introducing Gus to Walt and Jesse was just the beginning. Soon, Saul would be keeping Walt and Jesse out of jail.
Yeah, you do have a little Shit Creek action happening.
Hank finally gets the break he's been chasing in Season 3, Episode 6. He corners Walt and Jesse's rolling meth lab, the infamous RV, in Old Joe's junkyard. For a moment, it looks like it's game over. Now, at this point, most people would panic. Walt's practically hyperventilating inside the RV. Jesse's useless under pressure. And Hank is literally hammering on the door. The meth business is inches away from a steep cliff. Again, enter Saul Goodman. First, he calls Old Joe, the junkyard owner, and asks him to play It's a Domicile card. That stalls Hank. He has no warrant, which means no entry. It's brilliant, but temporary. So Saul layers a second move on top. He fabricates a family emergency. A fake phone call comes through Hank's cell. Marie's been in an accident, it says.
"I'm sorry to inform you that your wife's been in an automobile accident. She's being airlifted to Los Ranchos Medical Center and should be arriving there shortly."
Hank drops everything and rushes away. And just like that, the biggest piece of evidence in the entire investigation is gone forever. Saul's brilliance made this a two-part escape. The legal stalling worked, but the psychological manipulation sealed the deal.
You okay?
"Yeah. Why?" "Hank."
Neither Walt nor Jesse could have pulled it off on their own. Walt's too proud, and Jesse's too impulsive. But Saul, he knows the system, and he knows the people inside it. He just needs to tug on the right string. And even the toughest DEA agent
"You're
unravels.
gonna have to start paying me more."
That's crisis chess, and Saul checkmates Hank without even being on the board. Imagine what he'd do when a business front was on the line. Walt and Skyler need a clean front to launder mountains of meth money. Season 4, Episode 3 brings the answer. It's Bogdan's car wash. But there's a problem. Bogdan doesn't want to sell, especially not to Walt, and he seems to hold all the cards. But then again, Saul is about to perform one of his sleaziest and smartest plays. He doesn't negotiate with Bogdan on price or terms. Instead, he manufactures leverage. At Saul's request, his fixer, Patrick Kuby, pretends to be a government inspector. It quickly gets Bogdan's attention. Suddenly, he's imagining fines, legal headaches, and the possibility of his precious business shutting down. Now, Bogdan thinks he's cornered. His choices look terrible. He could either deal with endless red tape and government interference, or he could simply unload the car wash at a fair price. And just like that, the balance of power flips.
You just sit back, relax, and let a professional take over.
What's brilliant about this scheme is how bloodless it is. And always, Saul weaponizes paperwork, bureaucracy, and fear of government oversight. He uses Bogdan's own paranoia against him until selling feels like the only decision Bogdan could make. In the end, Skyler and Walt get their car wash. Bogdan walks away grumbling but relieved, and Saul proves once more that if you're caged, Saul will sell you the key to freedom. By the time we arrive at the end of Season 4, tensions between Walt and Jesse are at a boiling point. Trust is fraying. Gus is playing them against each other. And at this point, one teeny object becomes the centerpiece of suspicion. You guessed it, it's Jesse's ricin cigarette. This is where Saul's crew comes into play. Saul orchestrates one of the smallest but most devastating operations in the entire series. While Jesse is distracted in Saul's office, Huel, one of Saul's guys, quietly lifts the ricin cigarette right out of his pocket. At first glance, it feels like a sleight of hand trick you'd see at a carnival, but the consequences are devastating. Without that cigarette, Jesse is left vulnerable to Walt's manipulation. Later, when Brock falls ill, Walt plants the idea that Gus is behind it. Jesse is confused and desperate and turns against Gus. And all of this because Saul's team made a cigarette disappear. It's the definition of surgical manipulation. One micro move with macro consequences. A missing object engineered by Saul's quiet pickpocket play shifts the entire balance of the battle. Jesse never suspects Saul. Sometimes outsmarting everyone is about knowing exactly which thread to pull to make the whole web collapse. Imagine for a moment if a vanishing cigarette could change the plot course. What would Saul unleash when he decides to disappear himself? Towards the end of Season 5, Walt's empire is a smoking ruin. Jesse is enslaved, Hank is dead, and the DEA is watching the White family like hawks. It's the endgame, but Saul Goodman is still smiling. See, while Walt was busy clinging to his crown and Jesse was drowning in trauma, Saul activated a contingency plan he'd been holding on for years. Ed Galbraith, the quiet vacuum repair, sells new identities like spare parts, and Saul is about to disappear. The brilliance isn't just that Saul had the foresight to prepare the exit before he even needed it. Most characters in Breaking Bad improvise under fire, but Saul has his parachute packed long before the plane even took off. And here's the kicker. Saul survives. Again. Walt dies in a hail of bullets, Jesse barely escapes with his life, but Saul? He's eating a sad cinnamon roll in Omaha because he outsmarted the game by choosing not to play. It's pure survival intelligence, the kind that separates the really smart from the very dead. But Saul's greatest escape of all wasn't physical at all. It played out in a courtroom. Fast forward to the final of Better Call Saul. This is really the end of the road. Saul's caught. The feds are licking their chops. Every card in the deck seems stacked against him. This is where most men fold their hand and beg. But Saul's only getting started.
Juries, right? You never can tell. It's a roll of the dice.
The prosecutors want to send him away for life. Then Saul does what he's always done best. He spins a hopeless narrative into prime leverage. He dangles testimony. He plays up half-truths. And, in the final bit of razzle-dazzle, he reminds him how messy a trial could get if he talks. By the end of it, he's carved a deal so good it's almost funny. He gets to spend 7 years in a comfortable federal prison. Beats the heck out of life without parole, doesn't it? That's pure cleverness, not lawyering. But still, it's not all. Jimmy McGill takes a step forward. He confesses to everything. For the first 16 months, my every waking moment was spent building Walter White's drug empire.
And for the next 16 months, my every waking moment was spent building Walter White's drug empire.
Hold on.
And instead of Saul's 7 years, Jimmy takes 86. He ends the court case with,
Fact is, Walter White couldn't have done it without me. You got that?
you could say that's not outsmarting at all. But the fact that Saul could have walked with 7 years proves the point. He outplayed the entire system. Walt never managed that. Gus never wanted it. Long after the geniuses and masterminds were buried, Saul Goodman was still standing. But for all the exits he built, his final move wasn't about escape at all. It was about finally taking off the mask. Because in the end, Saul Goodman's smartest move was finally choosing which game he really wanted to win.
Better call Saul.